Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for kicking it with me on Thursday afternoon. It's the 17th, a week before Christmas. So I've got my festive purple Santa hat, and I hope I'm not offending anyone with this spirited sort of display. But I want to make sure that if you are Christmas shopping, you go to these guys right here. Five Star Guitars, my sponsors, based in Beaverton, Oregon. Their promo code is right there. If you go to fivestarguitars.com/all access live, they've got a ton of inventory and accessories that are all part of the sponsorship we have with All Access Live. If you enter the promo code All Access 15, you're going to get 15% off. And since they're based in Oregon, there's no sales tax. So you can save a ton of money. You can outdo any of those big chain stores or anything you find online by going to Five Star Guitars and using that promo code. Based in Oregon, let them know I sent you. I'd appreciate it. They've been incredibly supportive, as has Audix Microphones, who's provided this amazing microphone here and these headphones and everything else I use on the road. So, Audix Microphones, also based in Oregon. If you check out audixusa.com, they are a fantastic industry standard microphone company. So now, check this out. Many years ago, 25 years ago, I was blown away by not only the most incredible vocalist I'd probably ever seen live, but this drummer that rocked my world. I had never heard of him at that point, and I've noticed that everybody else that has had to follow in his footsteps, he's instantly their favorite drummer. So he's fresh off the recording in Florida with Myles Kennedy, and I want to introduce somebody to you that not only is an incredible drummer, but one of my favorite humans on the planet. So please welcome Zia Uddin. Zia, how you doing, my man?
Kevin Rankin. How are you, man?
I'm
Great to see you.
I'm really glad to see you too, buddy. I forgot to ask you if you wanted to wear a Santa hat, but
I like yours though.
yeah,
I wouldn't be able to compete with yours.
I got it from the Purple Store there in Seattle. So I I was going to ask you, man. You and I talked a little bit offline about watching the Kenny Aronoff episode, and
Yeah.
one of my favorite things is to look at people's backdrops and see what they've set up in their room. And so you've got this. I love your off center. You've got a little display of your drums in one side. You got some snares
Yes.
against the wall, and some gorgeous artwork. So tell me about what's on the back wall there.
It's just so these are old. So first of all, I've got some stuff from International Heroes. I did a record with Myles Kennedy a couple of years ago called "Year of the Tiger," which was
Yes, sir.
Loudwire's top album of 2018. So I've got that up there, a bunch of snare drums, and I just thought this might be a little more interesting as opposed to doing it up in the office
Yeah.
upstairs, which is like absolutely boring. But hey, man, first off, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be on this podcast. And secondly, congratulations to you because I went back and listened, watched some of the podcasts, and I loved what you're doing here. So it was fantastic. I love the Kenny Aronoff one, Dave Ambrosi's. There's a bunch of great ones. So congrats to you.
Thank you, man. I don't know if you caught that, the reason behind this whole thing, but I did it as an accident. I was doing Facebook Live interview with our guitarist from A Flock of Seagulls, and he just called me to sort of, kind of bitch about the fact that we were losing tour dates. We were sitting at home trying to figure out how the world was going to, be different.
Yeah.
And in that commiseration, a lot of people jumped in and they chimed in chat on Facebook saying, let us know how we can support you while you're not touring, and where can we find music to download. And Jennifer Batten reached out to me, and she said, you know what? This is a really, really good thing for you. It's helpful to people to kind of be able to voice their feelings. And it was cathartic to me. Selfishly, man, I just love catching up with my buddies, and I get inspired by so many. And since I can't get out there and watch you play live like I did 2 years ago today, I just found on Facebook a clip from your show in Seattle 2 years ago. And
2 years ago today.
today, yeah. In fact, I just shared it on Facebook. I wonder if
Wow.
I can. Wonder if I could share that right here on the little screen. Let's see if this works. This will be fun. For those of you, you were going down in that just outro vamp where Myles is rolling back his head. All right, hang on.
Freddie King tune.
All right. Oh, hang on. Hi. I realized as I was sharing this, I don't know that the audio was coming through. Could you hear any of that?
I couldn't hear. I was going to say I couldn't hear audio.
Okay, yeah, that's my bad. Sorry about that. I was there's this ripping solo. Miles is, eyes had rolled back in his head, and you were just slaying like a panther. When I was watching you play live, that's always how I always pictured you as this big sort of big cat, because you approach the drums like this panther. You kind of lean into it and kind of brooding, when you're playing. I don't know if that's you taking out some angst, but
I'm down. I'm down with the Brown Panther.
the Brown Panther, yeah, the next Marvel character, man. I yeah, so it was 2 years ago today. Walking Papers opened for you guys
Yeah,
at the.
great local band. Yeah, they're great.
I love them, man. I mean, I was hip to their stuff before when they were working with Duff, and watching them open for you guys. They played in Portland the next night, as a matter of fact, and so we caught. Oh, no, sorry, I went to see him at the Crocodile shortly after that, and then back the next night,
Yeah.
and became as as I am kind of adoring fan like I was with Mayfield back in the day. So let's go back in time. Let's talk Mayfield a little bit.
Sure.
And before, actually, so like back before the Myles Kennedy stuff, before Mayfield 4 even, you grew up in Spokane with Myles, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Miles and I grew up together. Went to well, we met each other in junior high schools where we met in
Wow.
band, and then just instantly connected on the music stuff, and became quick friends, fast friends, as they say, and then from there we formed a band together called Bittersweet, the Mighty Bittersweet,
The mighty.
um, and we did that band for a number of years. As a matter of fact, that was our so in like high school. That was that that's how we basically had our side jobs was playing playing bars. We would do I don't know like 3 or 4 sets a night. For I think it was 4 nights a week, something like that. And we were all underage, so so our parents had to sign these forms so that we could play at these bars underage. And but we had the time of our lives. We had an amazing time. It was a great group of folks that were involved in Bittersweet.
Who else was in that band that we might know?
Uh, the singer was Jason Stewart.
Okay.
We were all from Spokane. The singer was Jason Stewart. The other guitar player was Joel Tipke.
Right.
We had a couple bass players. First bass player was Chris Steffens, and then later Joe Oliver. And yeah, just a great group of folks. And there was kind of a little bit of a revolving door of other different bass players and whatnot, but just a great group of folks all together. And we had a blast. We just had a blast. It was fun.
You were saying that your memory was not so good, man. Look at you, just rattled off all those names quickly. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, stylistically, what was Bittersweet like musically?
I mean, Bittersweet was like a really. It was kind of more of a Miles will probably kill me, but like it was basically like a hair metal kind of band. It was
Okay.
influenced off of. I mean, our influences were pretty similar in terms of, like Zeppelin and, some of the great rock bands of the '70s, '60s, and '70s. But really, for the most part, it was kind of a hair metal band.
Yeah.
We would and we aside from playing the bar, so we could only play the bars, as our parents had to sign off for us to play at these bars. But aside from that, we would have to rent out these Grange halls. There's a number of Grange halls in Spokane, so we had to rent out these Grange halls, and that's how we would play shows. And basically, we I think Joe Oliver, who was the bass player, was he's a little bit older cat, so I think he was 20 or 21. So he would buy we'd get him to buy kegs, and we basically would put on these keggers, and we would charge whatever it was, like $5 or $10 or something, and as much beer as you could possibly drink. And we would headline these shows at the Grange halls, and then we'd find other local bands that were around our age to open for us, and that's where. And so we had a blast doing it. The downside was that the Grange Hall ownership found out that we were doing this. So slowly by slowly, we ended up having no place to play. But while we were doing it, it was a blast.
Yeah. Was Gatsby's around then? Is that like?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
Gatsby's is where we started
Okay.
playing bars. Yeah,
All
it was
right.
it was basically Gatsby's for the duration of us being in high school for the most part.
I remember doing Gatsby's with another band that you kind of grew up with, Wiser Sin, back
Yeah,
in the day too. Yeah, those guys
yeah.
were.
So the singer from Wiser Sin, Jason Stewart,
Yeah.
was the singer back in the day of Bittersweet. Same,
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
and
That,
actually the bass player too, Joe Oliver, also was in Wiser Sin. Same thing. Yeah. So they're Bittersweet alumni.
nice. Are they still? Are they around? You know, if those guys are Spokane.
Yeah, I haven't seen Jason. I haven't seen Jay in a long time, but I saw Joe Oliver when we were in Spokane. So when we were on tour with Myles, and I think we played. I think it was the Fox Theater. Maybe it was the Bing Theater in Spokane. But yeah, so I saw Joe. I was actually walking from my hotel to the venue, and ran into Joe Oliver. So yeah, he's the great guys, good people. They're still around, still supporting music, which is awesome.
Oh, I mean, they're at your show. I'm sure they're excited to see the development that you've had, right? Uh, so if they were, Bittersweet was first thing.
Yeah.
There was sort of a phase after that before Mayfield, right?
Yeah. So what happened was, let's see. So after Bittersweet disbanded, we formed another band that was called the Widows Party, which was more in the spirit, I would say, of like what was happening in Seattle in the early, like late '80s.
Okay.
So this is when we started listening to bands like Soundgarden
Mm.
and Grunt Truck and My Sister's Machine and those type Alice in Chains, those
Mother
bands.
Love Bone. That
Yeah, exactly. Mother Love.
right.
So like that. So Widow's Party was born out of that, and that's also around the same time frame. Myles. So we formed this new band, and I remember, and it was me, Joel Tipke plays guitar, uh, some other a couple of the other musicians, Joe Oliver, and at that time, there was never it was interesting because looking back on it, there was never a point where like Myles and the rest of us ever had any sort of falling out or anything. It was just like, hey, we're gonna do this. Do you want to? Are you interested in this? And at the time, I was like, I don't think so. I think I'm gonna go do my own thing. And he had a great gig at the time playing. When he was in college in Spokane, and then he had a great gig playing like at a hotel called the Rid Path with a
Citizen
local
Swing.
band. That was just before Citizen Swing.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was kind of the house band, if I remember correctly, at the Rid Path, and it was a great local band. They made decent money. He was in college, so we just kind of went our separate ways at that point. And then I moved to Seattle with that band. Myles stayed in Spokane, and then I think it was maybe a year after that he formed Citizen Swing.
Okay.
And yeah, so Citizen Swing came after that. But I remember it's interesting because I'm in Seattle playing in a band. He's in Spokane. They started up Citizen Swing, and I remember a mutual friend of ours, Randy Howell, was living in Seattle, and he had a demo tape. So he's like, "Oh, you want to hear Miles's new band?" I was like, "Oh, fuck, I'd love to."
Yeah.
Um, and so he puts on this. I'm pretty sure it was a cassette tape. Puts on a cassette, and so I'm listening to the band. I was like, "This is a really cool sound, man. Like, it's really interesting." It's a weird, it's just, no, I shouldn't say weird. It's a unique fusion. There's horns in the mix. There's like, it's kind of fusiony almost at times. It's rock at times. I was like, this is really cool. I was like, who's singing? The singer's great, man. Who's singing?
Yeah.
And I remember Randy looking at me going, "You don't know who's singing?" I was like, "No." He goes, "That's Myles." And I was
Wow.
like, "What?
Yeah.
Like what? How did that? Like when did that happen?"
Right.
I remember Myles singing, backing vocals and stuff, live. But that was really, that was probably the first time I'd heard him sing, actually singing.
Because he's primarily a guitarist, right?
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
the thing is like Myles is an incredible. I mean, everyone knows Myles now. I mean, or I shouldn't say now, but
Yeah.
vocals. But the thing is, like, he's an incredible guitar player. Like, I mean, that he started on guitar, right? So, and
Right.
still to this day, we just did a record a few months back, and we'll chat about that in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, his guitar playing is unbelievable. So
It's
like,
true.
so to me, just hearing that demo tape, and it's just like hearing Myles sing for me for the first time was just, I couldn't believe it. It blew my mind. It was fantastic. And subsequently they played shows in Seattle, so they would stay with us a lot of times at our we were renting this big house in West Seattle, and so they'd come over and stay with us, and we'd hang out and just have a great time and catch up. So it was always really, it was a super supportive kind of scene. It was
A lot of
fun.
respect. I mean, that's the
Oh,
big thing
sure.
about musicians, especially early formation. Egos kind of get in the way with people, and kind of respect goes out the door, especially when you've got, lead singer syndrome, right, with a lot of people. But I've never seen that in Miles, for sure. He's one of those guys that's so humble. It always has been.
Yep.
So he came over to stay with you guys. How did this happen that you guys ended up forming the band together?
So he was so yeah. So Citizen Swing was around for a number of years. In that time frame, I went to the UW. They were still doing Citizen Swing. I finished up at the University of Washington, and then auditioned for this band that was called Shovel Jerk.
Oh yeah.
Shovel Jerk was were the remnants of a great Pacific Northwest band called Black Happy. And so for whatever reason, and it was like a nine-piece band, folks that have been around following music in the Pacific Northwest will know Black Happy.
Yep.
So they were such a great band. And for whatever reason, their record label told them, like, hey, maybe it might be a better idea to just scale things down and do like a four-piece type situation. And so they were looking for a drummer. And so I auditioned for that band, got the gig, and then immediately started touring with them. So we released a record and then went out and started touring. And within that time frame, I think I was touring with them for maybe a year or two. And somewhere in that time frame, Myles and I have always kept in close touch. He's one of my best friends,
Yeah.
so we always keep in touch. We always shoot the shit. And I was out on the road, and it just was not, it's one of those gigs where it's like great musicianship, but just not on a personal level, not the right hang, not the
Isn't
right.
that isn't that weird? I mean, for people
Well,
that
and
don't
it
play,
makes all the difference in the world.
it totally does.
And to me, that's everything, honestly.
When people that don't play ask you about those kind of situations, when you see bands that can't stay together, um, but if you explain to somebody, the musicianship itself, the ability to play, is not even half of the gig. It's the hang that's the most important, right? Because
For sure.
unless you're going to play a solo gig, on your own, right? So,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I mean, you figured that out after
Figured
a
that out.
short
Yeah,
tour.
yeah, I figured that out maybe after being with that band for a year and a half, somewhere in there. And Myles and I had kept in touch, and I remember distinctly, he and I were on the phone together, and I was somewhere on the West Coast, and I just, how it is, like when you're not in a great space, to have to have that contact with somebody, and like to hear a familiar voice, and to
Oh,
have someone tell you, like, oh man, hang in there, buddy, and like that's so huge. So, but I remember he and I were on the phone together, and we were chatting, and he was like, how are things going out there? And I was like, not good, buddy. Things are
yeah.
not going great.
You're on the road when this is happening.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, things are not going great. We're in a van. The band's in a van.
Oh,
It's the whole thing. It's just like, it just wasn't going great. So, anyways, we had this conversation. He was like, you know what? I'm thinking about switching things up. We've been doing Citizen Swing for some time, and thinking about switching things up and maybe starting something new. And is it something? And we just had this kind of open conversation. He's like, are you interested, man? I would love to get together and just, jam on some stuff that I've got worked out. And I said, yeah, absolutely. Like, absolutely. No question.
Yeah.
And so that was it. So I finished out that tour with Shovel Jerk left. Um, and ironically, the drummer that was in Citizen Swing uh, went to go play with Shovel Jerk.
Oh,
And,
really?
yeah, and then Myles and I started getting together to just to start working on tunes. And so
So incestuous.
yeah, it is
Yeah,
exactly. And every and that drummer, by the way, great guy. This guy named Mike Shergy, great guy, great drummer. Just again, just a lot of respect there. Um, but so basically, Mayfield was formed out of that. So it was me and Myles getting together. The former guitar player that was in other guitar player that was in Citizen Swing was part of that mix as well. And then
is that,
Marty
is that
Meisner.
Craig?
Yeah, Craig,
Oh,
exactly.
okay. So I didn't realize he was in Citizen Swing. All right.
Yeah, Craig Johnson was in Citizen Swing, so he was in the mix for in Mayfield. Marty Meisner obviously was
You,
also in the mix as well, and that was the band, and and things happened pretty quickly, to be honest. So I mean, we started gigging around, we did an EP, started cutting demos, doing all that, and just played out as much as we could. It was a blast. We had a great time doing that, and
that's how you and I met.
that's how you and I, yeah,
Yeah. I
that's right. That's how you
first
and I.
first gig, the Phoenix. We played above ground, and
Mhm.
we raced up from Portland with my band Analama,
Yeah,
and
right.
got there, caught you guys, and I thought I'm never stepping on stage again. I was so I, I was so blown away by the power that was on stage. You guys were such a force to be reckoned with. That your drumming, Myles, like the unit that you guys had. You could really tell that you and Marty clicked, and there was a unspoken language that was happening that I just hadn't seen with bands before.
Well,
And it was
thank
amazing.
you. Appreciate that. Thank
It,
you. Really
yeah,
appreciate that.
uh, I always, the funny thing is some bands are so like competitive that they'll see something like that and find every reason to find fault with you because they can't stack up. But you guys didn't seem like you were, trying to compete with the other bands out there. You're doing your thing.
Yeah.
Was there a focus and a goal on we need to get a record deal, we're going to tour the world and become huge, or what was the idea then?
I don't think there was, to be honest. I think I think we all enjoyed what we were doing so much, um, and and whatever we were doing live seemed to resonate with folks, and that was a big component. And it was also during a time, I'll say, where I mean there were a lot of bands getting signed at the time,
Right.
but it was kind of in that it seemed like that there was a couple different peaks. One was in the heyday of the Seattle sound.
Yeah.
It was in that kind of early '90s time frame. There was a huge, like, everyone was getting signed,
Right.
and then things seemed to plateau. And then once again, like around 95, 96, 97, that time frame, same thing. There was kind of another peak where, like, a lot of different bands were getting signed.
Especially there in Seattle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Especially Pacific Northwest, I'd say.
Yep.
And so we were part of that. It happened fairly quick. I mean, we were doing our thing, cutting demos, playing out live, having a great time, and things just happened to. We were also connected with the right folks, so we had Susan Silver that was co-managing us at the time, and
Eric Hoppy too.
Eric, along with Eric Hoppy,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that was just, and that was huge, and they're great folks. They, put the band's interest first, and it was a great team. So we certainly benefited from that, and then got signed probably shortly thereafter.
Like 97, is that right?
Yeah, I think it was '97. Yeah.
Let me ask, for people that are out there, musicians that are watching, or people that know the industry, and maybe they didn't understand that development of the band. You're playing around the scene a lot. You've got a lot of regional appreciation. You've built up a fan base.
Yeah.
The material was certainly ready. At what point does a band get management to try and help them get to the next level where they really can, it's beyond just having a babysitter, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know I still don't know there are many different ways. There's many different channels. I don't know what the right way or wrong way is. I thought it's funny because I used to read all these music industry books and like, but there's no right. It's just to me, it's just like art. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. It's just, and I don't know if the time, I don't know about the timing either. That's the other component. It's just like for us, it just so happened that we had a great friend in Eric Hoppy, and he was aligned with Susan Silver, and things just worked out. And we would have proudly gone that route anyways. With Susan has an incredible tenure in management and has managed. She still manages Alice in Chains, right? And
Wow.
Soundgarden, and all these great artists. She used to co-manage Pearl Jam at one point with Kelly Curtis, right? So a lot of great tenure there. So either way, we would have gone that route.
But
But I think there's a
it
right
came
way.
through the friendship with Eric though. So you guys were friends first, and he said, "Hey, I got some managerial skills. I can do this." Or, I
Yeah,
guess I shouldn't have asked you when the right time is, but how about for you guys? When did you feel like this would really help us out by having somebody outside the band doing this?
what's interesting is that so I reached out to so when I was in Shovel Jerk, um, again I was not happy, and so I reached out to Susan Silver through a mutual friend and said, Susan, like I need some advice, and she was really fantastic, and we spent some time over the phone, and then she told me, I'm going to connect you with a really good friend of mine named Eric Hoppy, and you should have a conversation with him because he's connected with this whole kind of music scene at that time in the Bay Area. They were living in the Bay Area, so she's like, you should talk to Eric because not only is he just a great person, but he might be able to connect you with some folks as well. So I said, great. That's how I initially met Eric Hoppy.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was just through friendship, and Eric was still is a great guy,
Yeah.
and took his time, and we had this great conversation, and we'd hang out. So like anytime I was on tour coming through the Bay Area, he would, we'd hang out. We'd carve out time to go have dinner and have these great chats. And I had an opportunity to meet his family, and just like, so we became really close friends. And so that was really kind of the impetus for Eric to manage us along with Susan. So that's how that thing, it just happened super organically, to be honest with you.
That's probably the best way, right? I mean,
So
it would when things feel forced, there's no hope to really have any kind of organic, natural feeling to it.
exactly. Yeah, you hear about all these nightmare stories, and I've been through it too. We haven't always had the best of luck with management, aside from Eric and
Yeah.
Sue. They because when it happens organically as well, those folks have your best interest in mind. So that it makes all the difference, I think.
You're not necessarily a dollar sign, for them. Once you get into record labels, right, then all of a sudden you're a piece of the commerce puzzle.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
so, man, you signed in '97. You'd already done the EP before you got signed, right?
No, I think we got signed. I think we were signed, and then just almost immediately after we were signed, they had I think it was the label anyways. It had or our A&R had the concept to basically to record one of our live shows. So we were, we were we were pretty well versed at being able to play live and put on a really good live show. I mean, I think we all took a lot of pride in that, a lot
Yeah.
of ownership in that. And the label recognized that, our A&R recognized that, and they were like, you know what, we should, like, as a teaser, let's bring out a mobile truck, mobile recording studio, and let's do 1 or 2 nights in Spokane, your hometown, and let's record it live, and then we'll distill that down and to the four or five best tracks, and then mix those and release it as an EP. So that was the first thing that we released. I think it was under Epic,
Okay, right when you got the
which
deal.
was that EP. Yep. It's a live EP. Yep.
Outback Jacks, right?
It was at the mind. Yeah.
Man, that EP certainly for me it's representational of the time. It was representative of the time that I got to see you, thinking about those tunes. Knowing nothing was one that just blew my mind. A lot because of what Myles was doing on guitar on that
Yeah.
song. But
Absolutely.
but the record when you guys came out with the full length record,
Yeah.
It was a really great time. It was kind of like the last opportunity I felt like for rock bands to get representation and radio at a sort of a lower national level. So I mean, if you didn't have the marketing engine behind Metallica, then it was kind of rare to have bands get radio airplay. But it started happening for you guys. You had "Don't Walk Away," right? That popped in, and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So from the EP, then we did the full length album, and we recorded that in Seattle. And yeah, it was just it was just an interesting process. And we I think that if we could go, I think it's fair to say, like if we could go back in time, there's probably a lot of things we would do differently. Not only in terms of the recording of that album, and I'm proud of it, by the way. So
it is.
I'm not trying to talk shit about it, but I think there's a lot of things that we would do differently in terms of like how we recorded the album, and maybe have been a little bit more selective in the process overall. But secondly, in terms of like how the label handled the record and promotion, which single to go with first, all that kind of stuff. I think that we were all so new to, none of us had really been. I mean, I'd been signed before, but like it was it was like the Capricorn. It was a smaller record label, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
it was the first time that we had all been kind of in the big machine of
Yeah,
the music industry, and I think because of that, we were maybe a little timid to kind of raise our voices and ask a lot, ask really kind of more in-depth type questions that revolved around that stuff. And but we went with it. We went with the flow, and that album didn't sell a whole lot. We had a few. I think we released a couple singles to radio. The album didn't do a whole lot, and it was a great lesson for us in terms of just not really knowing the industry that well, and not really having accurate expectations. I think at the end of the day, that's the thing.
That is a big thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There was a quote recently. I can't remember who said it, but they were saying, which I love, which is like, if you expect anything out of the music industry, you're expecting too much.
Yeah, right. Isn't that so sad?
It is sad, but it's accurate.
Disillusioning for young, aspiring musicians when you've got your starry eyes and you think about, the tour buses and the limos and the big paychecks and the chicks and all that kind of stuff that goes along with, getting paid for your craft.
Yeah.
But yeah, the reality of it, and even more so now, right, is that those expectations are somewhat ridiculous, and yeah, you do have to kind of shift things a little bit. But
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so we did that. We did the first record. Things didn't go that well, and then in the meantime, the other guitar player in Mayfield, Craig, moved on, and so then we were left. So the Mayfield 4 was left as the Mayfield 3. We were left.
right,
These, I think overall it was. It was a little bit better environment, I think, for us, maybe artistically and on a number of different levels. And so we put together the second record, and went through that, released it. And the second record we were super stoked about, called Second Skin. And we were super proud of it, loved the production team behind it, which actually included Michael Elvis Basquet. Was engineering at that time. I think he's a 23 or 24-year-old first engineer.
wow. I didn't realize you worked with him back then.
Yeah,
Amazing.
Engineered that record. Isn't that crazy? And
That
then
is nuts.
Peter Collins produced it. Another just sort of gem, in the music industry. Peter Collins is just a great guy. He was like having the coolest uncle or the coolest dad in the studio with you, like just supportive but also no nonsense. But yeah.
Can I interrupt you for a second and just tell
please.
you? I think I've told you this before, but if people are watching this and didn't know this about me, Second Skin is my Desert Island record. You know that, right?
Oh, thank you.
Of any record on the planet, you could, stack it up against Physical Graffiti or anything else, man. Second Skin, to me, is my feeling. It's the greatest record in my life. So I want you to know how much it meant to me. So,
Oh, thank you, man.
yeah. All right. So go on now. I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, not at all. I appreciate that. But yeah, we did that record. Elvis was the first engineer on it. So that was the first time we met Elvis. And We did it in Woodstock, New York,
Wow. Okay.
and yeah, and we all lived together in this little compound. You know, this it was a studio. The studio doesn't exist anymore. It's called Bearsville, but a lot of great history behind that studio. But we all kind of lived together in this little compound, and we had the time of our lives hanging out with Elvis. Like he was just the nicest guy. He was just like one of us,
Yeah.
just hanging out. And so that's where we met Elvis. Had a great time doing that record. We're super proud of it. Super high expectations because we were proud of it. We had our expectations were up here, and then the record was released, and not a lot happened. Fortunately, we we continued to play live. We did a bunch of different tours,
You were
national tours.
Everclear, right?
Yeah, Everclear, Creed, Fuel. We did a lot of touring actually in Canada with an amazing band called Big Wreck.
Big Rex, so good, man.
They're incredible, man.
Yeah, for
Really
sure.
great.
Still killing it.
Still killing it. I just saw them a couple maybe last year,
Yeah.
the year before, and saw them in Victoria, BC, and they just crushed it.
Yeah.
They're amazing, So, but yeah, we just again high expectations. It unfortunately didn't do a whole lot, and I think by that point we were all probably the other great thing I will say about Second Skin was the fact that we needed a touring guitar player,
Yeah.
and found not only one of the most incredible musicians, but just an incredible person in Alessandro Cortini. So we brought him on board. Actually, we found him in Los Angeles and brought him on board with us. And
I
it
was,
was like
I was
having him
gonna.
on board was like a fan. I mean, we were like a family. It was just he was awesome.
It really did click. I was gonna ask you, did somebody refer him, or how did you guys connect?
Yeah, I mean that was so how we connected was there's probably these dudes in every major music city, but like there was a dude in Los Angeles that basically he's like the go-to guy if you need a touring
Barry
drum. Touring,
Barry Squires.
yes, thank you very much.
Oh my God, no way. That's who hooked you up with him?
Yes.
Wow.
So we did so we were connected with Barry, and then Barry was like, "Hey, let's do a couple days. I've curated this list of guitar players to come in and audition over a whatever 2 or 3 day time frame." So we set up shop at SIR in Los Angeles, and there was really some fantastic guitar players that came through there. But Alessandro came through and just his backing, he was hitting all the harmonies with the backing vocals, and just
Hmm.
it was just a vibe. He was just incredible. Just incredible, and just a good. You could tell just a good person, good
Yeah.
human being, and so that's how we found Alessandro. And then shortly thereafter, we flew him to poor guy. We flew him to Spokane, Washington, in the middle of winter.
Oh.
I don't know if he'd seen snow before, to be
Oh
honest.
no. Oh God.
So we fly him into Spokane, where there's like a couple feet of snow, and just started rehearsing and spending time with him. But he's to this day remains one of my dearest friends. I just love that guy, and he's just an incredible musician. Just recently got inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Nine Inch Nails. So it's amazing.
That really is incredible. I mean, I hadn't talked to him in years, and every once in a while I'd see his name come across, with other things. But yeah, when I saw the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, I had no idea that he was even in the band, which is amazing, right? And Josh Freese still playing drums for the gig as well, right? So
No, Josh was kind of like an interim
okay,
drummer. And Josh Freese is
yeah, he's an interim drummer for everybody, right?
just a monster drummer.
Yeah,
Um, so like Josh was like an interim drummer for them. They've had the same cat though. His name is Alon Rubin,
mm.
who's been on drums for them now. He probably came on board Nine Inch Nails maybe a year or two after Alessandro. And this guy is
Wow,
he also just a sweetheart. He also fronts his own band. Like he's a singer songwriter. He plays 5 or 6 different
of
instruments,
course.
and he's one of these cats where like drums are just like piece of cake. Just
Wow,
he's unbelievable. Yeah, great drummer. Yeah, and I can't remember that he has a. Like I said, he fronts his own band.
sure.
And, can't remember the name of it right now, but they're fantastic. Great guy.
So Alessandro gets flown to Spokane, and this is just a prep for tours. Is that what the plan was?
Yeah,
Everybody's living there, and
exactly. Everyone was living there at the time. So yeah, I think the idea was just to get him in, start rehearsing, start kind of getting him into the mix and getting to know him. And so yeah, that was part of the whole thing. So we did that, and then we toured. And so like I said, we everyone, from Everclear to Creed to Fuel, Big Wreck, a bunch of these bands, and had a great time. The record, we had an amazing time. The record, unfortunately, wasn't doing quite well. We had also changed management and a bunch of others, and at the label in the interim, there had been a bunch of changes that had taken place over the course of when we initially signed. And so we just got to a point where it's just like, we had to write. The record didn't do anything. Again, we had huge expectations. Super proud of. We were all incredibly proud of that record. Album didn't do anything, and then the label comes back to us and they was like, "Hey guys, maybe you should start writing for another record." And we were like, "Holy shit! You got to be kidding! Like, are we really done with the, are we done with this album cycle? Like, it doesn't seem like it." So I think it was, I think that was probably it. I think we were probably not probably we were definitely just kind of disenchanted with the whole thing, and that was it. I remember, Myles came over. I think it was maybe 2001, something like that. 2002 came over to, and we actually lived at the time, like 2 blocks from each other.
oh,
So he came. He walked down and
he trudged through the snow, and yeah,
and anyways, and we were just hanging out, and it was just like I don't know if I can do this I don't think I can do this anymore, and I agreed with him, and the thing that we talked about for the longest time was just that, hey, I mean, our friendship means more than anything, right? At the end of the day, that's what this is about, for the both of us, and I get it, So yeah, if it's time for us to move on individually, then it's that time, let's do it. So, and it wasn't, there was no, it was, the conversation was literally like that. It was just, and he and I have always been that way. Just, and we just have a great rapport. And so that was in all the respect in the world for each other. So that was it. So the band kind of dissipated from there.
you know. So that kind of brings me to the conversation you and I had a few weeks ago about what's happened to a lot of people now in the pandemic. You chose at that point to say, you know what, we've had enough, right? Put an end to this. But the pandemic chose to have the industry stop. And so a lot of people, creatives of all types, I mean, everybody's identity all of a sudden became not a touring musician, not a rock star, not a performer. And the identity crisis that's happening right now is real for so many people. And
Sure.
I think, musicians for sure, I would say, Broadway actors and actresses, that kind of thing, theatrical people, theatrical performers are kind of in that same boat. There's no way they're having these shows,
Yeah.
and where you find fulfillment and really sort of, you can kind of transcend your, your sort of physical spirit when you're on stage. I mean, I know that feeling, that sort of spiritual kind of vibe, man. You get goosebumps when you're on stage, and you're not just on stage with each other, but you're interacting with people. The thing that happens back and forth between people live
Sure.
is, it's unexplainable. People don't quite, they don't quite understand it. And so when you go through the identity crisis, tell me about how you were able to recognize that and then shift so that you could move on.
Well, that's the thing, is like, I think you're right. I mean, in terms of categorizing, I mean, there's two different things. One is that, a band breaks up, aside from any kind of pandemic, right, or whatever the case is, and then you've got to shift. You're right. I mean, I definitely, I mean, my heart goes out to, anyone who's out there that where their livelihood is tied to a live performance aspect, and it's the worst,
Yeah.
And so I get it. For me, it was different because, yeah, I mean, it just, the band was done, and, and my mentality was just that I had to to pivot. It was just time for me to shift.
Yeah.
And I was completely disenchanted with the music industry as well at the time. And,
Sure.
was, just felt kind of like hollowed out. I just felt like I just been hollowed out. Like we put everything into this thing, our passion and, I mean, everything into it, and, time and artistry and everything else. And so I just kind of felt hollowed out at the time. And so for me, it was just, I had to pivot and shift away, honestly, from playing, period. And that's just me. I'm not suggesting this is the right thing for
No,
anybody.
but I want to know about
I'm
you.
just
Yeah. So
saying,
you just stepped away.
yeah, my personal experience was just that I just had to shift. And,
Away from drums entirely.
yeah, I probably didn't play drums for a good year. I didn't touch sticks. I didn't pick up sticks. I put everything away in cases in the basement, and just left music altogether. Like even the contacts that we'd have, how it is when you're in the industry, you have a team surrounding you. You've got management, you've got your attorney, you've got your business managers, you've got PR, like you've got the label, you've got this whole team.
Yeah.
And I just basically, I just kissed it all goodbye. I had to move on. And for me, that's what worked, at the time, just to shift and move on. And, kind of, went into the corporate world, focused on my family. Those were the two main things for me, like,
Okay.
especially my family.
Yeah.
Christy and Tyler, I just was able to spend all the time with them now exclusively. So I really kind of shifted my focus towards family. And then aside from that, you're like, holy shit, how do I make a living now? Like,
Right.
what do I do here? And for me, I've been very fortunate that, I've always had a good business sense, and so just shifted into the corporate world, basically. And that was it, and I know that's not, it's not anything I'm necessarily advocating for anyone else to do. I'm just saying, like, for me, that's what I had to do to move
Oh,
on. And it was tough. And, I didn't, honestly, I thought there for a while. I thought, like, I think I'm done with drums.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll pick up sticks again. But interestingly, like, it always, I think I was telling you this the other day, it always seems to come back around somehow. Like, for at least for me, it always, both music and drumming, it's just, I can't not do it.
Yeah.
I have to do it, for even if it's just me down here recording tracks with a buddy, and we're just sharing files back and forth. I love to do it. So, and I feel like at the end of the day, and for me, it's cathartic,
Yeah.
and it's therapy. So I feel like I always have to do it. And somehow it always seems to come back around, and, yeah. So we moved to Seattle after, Mayfield broke up, and I focused on kind of my corporate gig, and then shortly thereafter, decided to kind of finally start piecemealing a band together, and we put together a band called the International Heroes, with an old high school buddy of mine, Mark Anderson, and then, a local singer here in the Seattle scene named Trevor Hess. And,
Oh, wow.
yeah, just this amazing, beautiful, smoky baritone voice. And,
Yeah. Great
yeah,
band.
thank you, man. So we did that for several years, and, which was a blast to do. And, that same thing that kind of dissipated after a while, and then from there, was fortunate to pick up some studio gigs, and so doing that stuff. And then I've been playing locally with some buddies, and playing out live. And the main reason being is because I love to play out live. I mean, I
Yeah.
love studio work, but I love the live performance aspect, like you were talking about earlier. So, it gave me the opportunity to do that, and I didn't have to deal with booking shows or settling up after the show, or, promoting the show. I didn't have to, and I still don't. And so that falls into someone else's purview. So it allows me to just focus on playing and just
Yeah.
having a great time. So I loved it. And So we did that, and I still do that here locally.
when
Um,
the clubs are open and you can actually go
yep,
play. Yeah.
exactly. And then maybe around 2018, somewhere in there, maybe late 2017, Myles reached back out, and like I said, we had always just kept in touch over the years, and so he reached back out and said, "Hey, man, I'm thinking about doing a solo record, and would love to send you some tracks and kind of and get your thoughts on it, and go from there and see if it's something that you might be interested in." And I think I told him, I was like, I just send it to me. I don't have to hear it. Just
Right.
just send it.
Yeah. You
Just
don't have to
send
sell
it.
yourself to me, man. I know your stuff.
And I don't think, yeah, and he wasn't selling himself. It's just
No.
like, hey man, I want to get you. It's like, you don't need to get my thoughts. You already
Right.
have my thoughts,
Yeah.
right? Just start sending over shit. Let's start working on stuff. Um, so that was, that material ended up being Year of the Tiger record, which came out in 2018,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and we just had a blast too. It was kind of, so he and I hadn't worked together like in a studio environment for a number, for a long time, probably since Mayfield days was the last time he and I were in a
Wow.
studio together. And in that time frame, obviously, he had done a ton of AB records and Slash records and whatever else have you. And so he's sending me tunes, and then and the songs were incredible. And I just started, working out parts, he
Yeah.
like literally here. And so the thing was that the only part to the whole process that was a little unnerving was like there was never any pre-production. So what ends up happening is like we start going through, so we end up with however many, 12 or 14 tunes or whatever. There's never any pre, so in the meantime he's not hearing anything, any of my drum stuff, and there's no pre-pro. And then and then it's like, all right, well, we booked the studio, we're going to head down to Orlando to record. And so day one, I'm set up behind this beautiful, vintage Ludwig classic maple with all these incredible mics, and it's like, all right, let's go. And we recorded the 2-inch tape, and it's like that was the first time they were doing drum parts. Yeah.
Wow. And 2-inch too. That's great. You didn't go digital. You went the old school analog.
Yeah, that record, yeah, was done at 2-inch.
It
And
it sounds like it. It's
yeah, it's just a gorgeous record. And I just, from a songwriting perspective and the vocals on it, all the guitar work on it, it's just incredible. It's Myles really did a stellar job, and Elvis and everyone else that worked on that record. But the main thing was like we had an absolute blast doing it. It was like, and I think he and I kind of both missed that. And Tim Tournier plays bass on that record, and he's just an amazing human, but also just a great bass player. And so like it was just a great mix of people, great mix of human beings.
nice.
And we had the time of our lives doing that. Right? It was so much fun. And then from my perspective, like we tracked, and then I flew out, and I think I had a vacation with my family, and I was like, man, that was a blast. Like it was so much fun to do that. And in my mind, I was like, it would be so much fun if at some point in the future, like we have another opportunity to do it, because we just had so much fun doing it. And then, whatever it was, a couple months later, then Tim and Myles reached back out, and they're like, hey, we're going to tour this thing. So we need you to come out and tour this thing. So
How many dates did you guys end up doing?
I don't recall off the top of my head. We did a European tour, and then the U.S. tour, and I think it was like the second go round for Myles on the U.S. tour. It was the first time he'd just done it solo
Oh yeah.
with Tim, I think. But yeah, it was a bunch of, and I'd never toured Europe before, so for me that was just, it was incredible. We had such a blast doing that together. And then
You saw the Dan Reed Network guys over there. I know.
yeah, so exactly, those guys are just, what an amazing band and great people. Yeah, we're doing this festival in Wales, and and on the billing, it's a Dan Reed Network, and I was like, I love Dan Reed Network, but I don't know those, like I don't know Dan Reed.
Yeah.
So it's like personally.
Yeah.
So I was like, but this is gonna. I'm looking forward to the show, and it was so funny because I showed up there, and I'm in catering or something, and then here, and then in walks Dan Pred and Dacre, Rob
Yeah.
Dacre. So it's just, man, it was amazing to see them, and they're just a great band, great group of guys for sure, and they
Yeah, of
killed it.
course.
They were fantastic live. It was like this epic, it was just pouring down rain at this outdoor festival in Wales. It's just mud everywhere, but it was such a blast. It was fun to see them reconnect with some of those cats, and it was a lot of fun.
Rob mentioned that you're definitely one of his favorite drummers of all time. I asked him about Myles' stories because having known Myles for a long time too, and he actually worked on that remix of Eden on
Yeah,
on
yeah.
the second record. So
Dacre is one of those cats that's just like super talented. He's got so much stuff to work with in his tool belt. He's, aside from being a great singer songwriter and musician, yeah, he's also super talented in the studio. So yeah, he did a remix for us, like I think it was the rock remix of Eden
right,
that Dacre did for us, and he's just a super talented guy.
he is. Yeah, no, it's neat to hear that his interpretation of what that song should sound like. But
Yeah,
and Dan Pred, I remember Dan coming home from the festival, that tour, their European tour, and he said, "Man." He told me about the same thing about the rain. He said watching you guys, he didn't realize that Myles was touring with you on drums, and he was so
exactly.
excited to see you out there. He
Yeah,
said, you're using multi rods and made it sound like Bonham up there with this big badass kit. So
yeah. It
I
was it was fun. It was fun, and we rented this kit, which was like it turned out to be this fantastic. I wish I would have bought it. To be honest with you, it was this beautiful, Ludwig super classic with a 24-inch kick. It was
mm,
basically the bottom setup with two racks, and it was just, oh man, and it sounded killer. And we just had a great crew on that run as well. I mean,
uh,
on all the runs, but like, in particular, it always sounded fantastic, live in Europe for whatever reason. But anyways, we had a blast doing it, and then we did a U.S. run subsequent to that, and then same thing. I was like, man, if we, that was such a blast. If the opportunity ever came up again, it would be amazing. And then Myles reached out earlier this year and said, hey, I'm putting some tunes together, man, and I want to start sending stuff your way. And I was like, yeah, let's
God,
start sending it. So we did that. We did the same process, same team, and it's definitely a much different record this time around. It's a lot more rocking.
really? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it is for sure, and I think some of the tunes are definitely very much reminiscent of Mayfield type of tune.
Yay!
Yeah, which is cool. So it'll be a lot of fun, and a lot of fun to kind of get receive feedback from folks out there consuming it. But we had a blast. Like I said, it's just a great. It makes all the difference having great folks around.
Oh,
It does.
no, like, speaking of that, my pal Mike Skill from the Romantics just jumped into the chat here, and he's the only person I've done any recording or playing with during the pandemic. We just did some stuff for a a charity in Detroit, actually, and just like that, he's such a great human being, man. When you're in the studio,
Yeah.
the energy is so different, right? You've talked about doing session gigs and doing studio tracks.
Yep.
It's pretty sterile in that kind of environment, even if you're really into the music. But if you don't have any synergy with the musicians,
Yeah.
then it feels, it's kind of it's kind of like dating, right? I mean, you get set up on a date, and you could just tell there's no chemistry.
Right.
But when you've got somebody that you vibe with so much, the opportunity to really just to mesh with is a beautiful thing. It's rare when you find it. It's good that you hang on to it,
For
and
sure.
actually really cool. It's kind of mafia. When they in the mafia movies, when they say, I try to get out. Once I get out, they always pull me back in. That's like Myles, continuing to like drag you back into this thing,
Yeah.
kicking and screaming, not
It's
kicking and screaming.
Yeah, no, yeah, but it's the best, man. I mean, it's having the opportunity to work with him and that entire group of musicians, and is just it's unbelievable, and it's such a great opportunity for me, and it's a blessing. It just gives me the opportunity to continue to have kind of one foot in that world, which is kind of a rarity, but it's a blessing for sure. And just a great, again, great group of Orlando in August. So it's this whole situation, where no one's going anywhere. We all stayed in the same house on the studio grounds, but and normally I would say that like spending 2 weeks like that with folks or 10 days with folks that you don't care for that much is not going to work well.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think that's part of the magic of this thing is that we all at the end of the day we all love each other. We all have tremendous amount of respect for each other. We're all really close friends, and it's just it's like a fucking it's like family camp. It's just like
Well, let
which
me ask you about that, right? I mean, because the respect it's apparent. You can see that with you guys. Are there points where you're doing the recording? Typically with a record, right? You're doing basic tracks. Are you doing that same thing where you're laying down bass and drums and maybe
Mhm.
a scratched vocal and rhythm guitar? Are there places where you just sit back and go, "Holy shit, Myles, dude, your voice"? And I'm betting he does the same thing with your drumming. But are there points where you can kind of disconnect yourself from knowing that he's your buddy and just say, "Wow, this dude is real"?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And we don't. Um, well, he's super expressive about. So like, there's a number of different ways. Like we did the last record a little bit different than how we did this one, but in the fact that the stuff that he was delivering in terms of demos on this new record were almost like fully baked. Like
Wow.
it blows my mind how well he's able to like he's like Dacre, right? How how
Right.
how well he's able to hone in his engineering skills and get the sounds that he's getting on his demos. It's pretty remarkable. So it was almost fully baked, aside from like drums and some bass stuff, and so that gave me just a great starting point. It gave me a great reference point, and then we went from there. So that's basically how we kind of went into the studio environment was with that. We did a little bit of pre-production on the front end, and Elvis is a musician as well. Like he's an amazing guitar player. So like he's great with arranging stuff. So like he'll, hey, I hear this fill different, or I hear a fill going into there, or whatever the case may be. So we worked that way. But yeah, definitely there are, there even just on the demos. Like when I was down here working with the demos that Myles was sending, it's just like, holy shit!
Yeah.
Like that is just like it's unbelievable. So yeah, absolutely. And typically when he tracks vocals, he likes to be in the studio by himself. So there isn't that clutter,
Right.
happening around him. But yeah, just even on the demo stuff that he sent over, it was just yeah, the vocals are always just stellar. The main thing is just the same thing, and I think I expressed this on the last record that I think will really blow a lot of minds are his guitar playing
Oh,
skills on this record are unbelievable. Like, he's one of these dudes is like he's continued to work on his vocals and hone those in, but the other thing he's been working on in the interim is his guitar playing. And
right.
really, like, this is a beautiful showcase for his songwriting and guitar playing in particular. But yeah, it's just some of the solo work he's doing on this thing is really really cool. So it'll be fun.
Do you have a favorite Miles Kennedy solo on recordings?
I mean, really, I would say that I mean most of the stuff he does from a guitar perspective, I love. I would say this record probably has my favorite solo on it.
Wow.
There's
Okay.
a there's a yeah, I won't go into a lot of detail for this for the sake of him killing me, but like there's an epic track on this new record, and it has a couple different solo sections, but like this when I just listen to the track, just the solo sections give me goosebumps. It's just one
Oh,
of those things where it's just like, man, what? So like that, I would say that's probably it's forthcoming.
okay.
But when the record comes out, yeah,
I,
you'll definitely have an opportunity to check it out.
Goosebumps solo for me
Yeah,
on Believe, the Second Skin record. When that
yeah,
solo comes in, the way that the song builds too, there's a whole dynamic and the subject matter of the song, but then when the solo just unleashes
Yeah.
It's one of those things that to me, it's that goose. It's like the feeling I get on stage when I hear that song, which is really fun. But I just, back when you and I first met and I was with Analama, then that band to me was really special. The girl, the singer, Leah, our singer and bassist, was gifted songwriter, amazing vocalist,
Yeah,
and
that was a good band.
it was a good band. Yeah, the guitarist has been texting me here as I'm chatting with you right now, Greg. But there were two songs I remember specifically with that band that I would tear up on stage when we were playing. Did you ever have any moments like that were so moving that you would actually kind of tear up a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. There was a tune that we did on the last record, Mayfield Days. I don't recall, to be honest with you.
Okay.
We did a tune on the last MK solo record that's called "Love Can Only Heal."
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's so funny. Like Miles is like, hopefully he doesn't kill me when I say it, but like, Miles is one of these dudes where like, I think that he's such a prolific songwriter that like sometimes he gets into his own head where he feels like this song is really not that great, And so like we'll get into a pre-production mode or get in the studio, and that was the case on the last record where he was like, I don't know, I've been thinking about this tune. I've recorded it in the past, and I just don't know if it's going to work well, and blah blah blah. So, anyways, we're like, well, just play the song. Like, let's just listen to it. And then he plays a sort of a different version of the song, and literally, like, I was tearing up as I was listening to the song. And I look over at Elvis, and Elvis is in the same place that I'm in. I was like, holy shit, we have to record this, man. I mean, we have to record it. We just have to record it. And
it's an incredible song.
It's an incredible song. Exactly. So to me, it's still a super powerful song, and the lyrics really resonate with me. And so anyways, yeah, so that was definitely a tune where we're live. Sometimes it's just the right evening, the right environment. He'll start playing that tune, and just even the opening notes of that song, like good.
Yeah, you're just putting your head down. I remember, and I remember crying watching you guys do that song. Both, Seattle when you guys were touring together, and then also seeing Myles, Crocodile doing his thing there too on his own. And it's like I don't mind admitting crying in front of those tunes. And Myles would not kill you for any of those things because he is so humble, and I love how self-deprecating he is on stage, but
and White Flag, I'd say White Flag is the one probably. Like that's the other one for me that always gets me. And and it's the same thing. I think I was at that. I don't think we were at the same show, but I saw him also. Like he was at the Crocodile solo when he did that first run of the Year of the Tiger, those tour dates. And anyways, that was I was like the biggest advocate of that song because again, he was like, I don't know about this tune. It seems kind of, whatever, he had his I think it was just, again, like in his own head about the tune and didn't think it was a great song. And I was like, no, this tune is unbelievable. No, come on.
Yeah.
We're doing it. Let's do it,
We were at that show together.
Yeah, that's right.
Joel was there too after the show.
Joel was there too, and I was a huge advocate of that song. So, anyways, that song is another one of those tunes where, like, if I hear it, not so much when I'm playing it on stage, we do like an acoustic rendition, but if it's just him on stage playing it, it gets me for sure.
That's so hard, isn't it? I mean, one thing that I started doing too with people on this show, because it's interesting, is to ask people about their guilty pleasures. And I didn't preface I didn't prep you for this at all. Yeah. But it's funny because the last episode I had a couple of days ago was with Rough Cut from back in the 80s, wow. Right? And
holy moly.
Yeah, I didn't give them any warning either, so they pulled out ABBA as one of their guilty pleasures, and lots of cool R&B stuff, which shouldn't be guilty pleasure. I mean, saying the Temptations were an influence is not a guilty pleasure.
No.
But how about Dave Ellefson from Megadeth the other day said that he quietly admitted liking disco so he could get girls back in the 70s. But how about you, man? Are there guilty pleasure? Is there a guilty pleasure?
There's always guilty pleasures. Well, so this is definitely, I would say, guilty pleasure. But I have a thing like I love Ambrosia. You
Oh,
remember that band
of
Ambrosia from
course.
the 70s?
Yeah, of course. Any yacht rock is not a guilty pleasure. It's awesome stuff.
It's just like I don't know what it is, but like anytime an Ambrosia tune comes on, it's so much so where like this past summer, we're all hunkering down, spending time here at the house and not really going anywhere, with this freaking pandemic thing. And so, anyways, we're fortunate we live in a spot where we can take advantage of the outdoors and have all these outdoor areas. And so, it would be this kind of thing where at the end of the day, it's like 5 o'clock rolls around and, it's a beautiful summer here in Seattle. And so I'm sitting outside with the wife and we're having a glass of wine or something. And she's like, what do you want to, she's always asking, like, what do you want to listen to? And I was like, Ambrosia.
Oh, that's the perfect time for ambrosia, right? Glass of wine, got the picnic table or the picnic blanket out. Yeah, man.
I love the Ambrosia. And the other thing I really love are Hall and Oates.
Oh, yeah.
That's another guilty pleasure for me is Hall and Oates.
Those hooks, man.
They're incredible.
Yeah, they are. It like hook after hook after hook, man. That I like that one though. That's good. The rocker in you may feel like that's a little guilty pleasure, but if you're a sucker for a ballad and you're a sucker for a good song, it doesn't matter what genre, right? So, but,
Sure. How about, so what would you say, what are your guilty pleasures? What would you say are your,
well, the heavy metal moniker that I've had for since junior high, people wouldn't expect that Prince is my all-time favorite artist, and
Yes.
but people that know me from back in the day know that
oh,
I dress up like him. I would, I wanted to be Prince, man, when I was young, and uh,
also
I
not a guilty pleasure. I'm a huge Prince fan too.
totally, yeah, that's not a guilty pleasure. I mean, what blows me away is talking to some people who really feel like he's just not that talented. It's like you talked about Myles and his guitar playing. People that don't realize what an unbelievable guitarist Prince was, or anything. He could play anything, right? And I think I have a ridiculous amount of butt rock hairband, like
Yeah.
fanaticism. And so if you were to go through my record collection, you'd probably find Dirty Looks, Love Hate, the like sleazier side of the LA music scene, the LA Guns and even more obscure, that I would say now it's a guilty pleasure. It's the stuff that my kids completely make fun of, but
Right.
I love it, man. So,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you, I was never a lyrics guy until the last couple of years. And so when I go back to those songs, I realize how like vapid and superficial they all are. But the yacht rock stuff was actually really substantive, and it's a lot of it was, if you listen to whatever Jim Croce, or Gordon Lightfoot, you think, oh my
Sure.
God, what poetic songwriters, But
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Miles Kennedy guy seems to have that down too,
Oh, for sure.
all from the heart. And
Yeah, I think
it's
that's his. That's a secret weapon for sure. That's
I
his secret weapon is that he's like he does a lot of things incredibly well, but like the balladeer side in him is like
yeah.
that's the secret weapon.
Yeah, but I would say him touring live, you're his secret weapon, man. I'm telling you, you have no idea how excited I was to see you out playing again, man. You've
Thank you.
always been one of my favorite drummers,
Thank
and
you.
I love seeing the AOT kit right there with you. You just
Yeah,
represent.
exactly. I've had this guy for a long time. This is a Ray Ayotte era drum kit. But yeah, I love this thing. I just couldn't. I used to have a couple of them, and it is
It,
like with too many kits over the years. It's like where do I store all this shit? But anyways,
you
I,
storm at Todd Zuckerman's house.
yeah, did you see that was insane.
Yeah, on the podcast, I'm like, can you walk around and show this off? But
First of all, there's no denying that guy is just a monster
yeah,
drummer. He's so fantastic, and he's so knowledgeable. That's the
right,
other thing too. Is like you could ask him about any single of his 15,000 pieces of drum equipment in there. You could ask him about any single one, and he'll tell you like the history behind
right.
it. But it's like at the same time, it's like I can't even house like four drum kits. Like
Yep.
what, that was incredible to see all that stuff in the background there. It was and a little bit of like and to me, it's a little ironic that he was doing the Spinal Tap gig, because it's a little Spinal Tap-ish too. It's like,
Right.
what are you doing with 15,000 fucking drums, dude? Like, what are you gonna do with all that stuff?
I love how much he appreciates the humor in the Spinal Tap thing too.
For sure.
Like a
Yeah.
perfect gig for him. I knew Bissonette did that thing as well, but Todd, he's the right gig, right? It's the right gig for him.
Sure. Yeah.
Your
Exactly.
snares back there, you probably have a Keplinger, right? Wasn't that one of your big snares?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm fortunate that one of my good buddies that I was introduced to when I was in college was Greg Keplinger, is like a master snare drum builder who lives here in the Seattle area, and so he and I became really really close friends, and he lived. So I went to the University of Washington. So he lived where the campus, where UW campus is. He lived literally, about 5 blocks or so from the campus. So when I'd get breaks in between classes and stuff, I'd walk over to his place and just hang out and shoot the shit. And we'd grab a coffee and a scone and hang out. And he'd show me what he was building. And I fell in love with that. Like, this guy's rolling snare drum, rolling shells and like experimenting with different shells. And so because of that, a lot of the stuff that I acquired from him were like things that like they were prototypes. It was like he was experimenting with brass, or he's experimenting with black iron, or he's experimenting with thin gauge stainless versus so I've got probably 7 or 8 or maybe 10 Keplingers.
Wow.
And all of them are prototypes, and because they're prototypes, like he would depart drums. I'm just trying to think of a good example, but like he would take apart, like he'd use Rogers lugs, on a new brass shell that he's just messing around with. And so when he perfected it, then he would go to sell it. It's like no one wants a Keplinger brass shell that has Rogers lugs on it.
Right.
So he'd sell it to me. He was like, do you want the drum? I was like, sure. And I was like, what do you want for it? And he's like, just give me this or that. No big deal, And so I ended up with a bunch of his drums that way. And those are my coveted drums. As a matter of fact, a lot of this last MK record was done with an AOT Keplinger.
Oh, really?
I love, yeah.
The wood hoops?
Yeah, with wood hoops. You want me to grab it?
Wow.
It's going to make a bunch of noise. But yeah.
Let's see that guy. You mind holding it up towards the camera?
Yeah, that's this guy. This thing weighs about 35 pounds.
Look at that. That is beautiful. Wow.
Cool.
God, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Man.
The wood hoops on it.
With the inlays are gorgeous, man.
Isn't that cool?
That's beautiful.
So this is one of his shells that then AOT took and then did the wood hoops on, put all their lugs and all their hardware on. But anyways, this thing is this is probably one of my most coveted, because anytime that thing gets in the studio, it just sounds incredible. I took it down. Yeah, I took like 4 or 5 snares with me down to Orlando, and out of everything I took down there, every time I set that drum up and cracked it, Elvis was like, "Holy shit! Can I buy that?
Oh, right.
Buy that snare? Yeah, let me just buy the snare off you." I was like, "There's no way. That's a fucking one of a kind thing. I can't sell." He's like, "All right, well, let's." So he was online trying to find one, and but it just sounds amazing, whether it's live or in the studio. It's just a killer drum.
You've represented Keplinger well, man. All the stuff you've recorded.
He's my guy. I haven't seen him in a long time, but he builds the best snare drums. And he's probably better well known now for those Ching rings. Like he Ching rings, so he's doing a lot of those right now. But yeah, he's just always proud to represent him and he's an artist, man. He's a true craftsman. So
I love it.
Him and Sabian. Sabian's been with me for a long time as well. So those are the two.
Man, you and your Canadian companies. This is good, man.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
I feel a little reverence to them too. So folks up there in Canada, we appreciate you, and we feel you.
And Sabian just crushing it. Yeah, absolutely. And so same thing. We finished up this session, and the engineer Jeff reached out to me and was like, "What? Tell me exactly what you were using on the record for your cymbal setups.
Wow.
Exactly what you were using."
That's
Yeah, so it turned out great. It's a fun record, so I'm excited for everyone to hear it.
Is there a release date?
I don't think there's a formal release date.
Okay.
I think they're looking at. I think, anyways, they're looking for a release date somewhere just before summer next year. I think.
Get you back out on the road again, man. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's if that'll be the case, or if Myles will just do another just solo by himself out there with an acoustic and stuff. But either way, it's tough to know. It's like I don't know. Are festivals going to be back?
Nobody knows.
I don't know.
Don't want to speculate even, for me.
Yeah, I don't want to. I want to be like as cautiously optimistic as possible, and
Right.
I want to believe that that's going to be the case. That we'll be, have the ability to go to festivals in June, July.
In a
So,
safe
but
and healthy way, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. Is how do you keep people, how do you keep people safe at the
Right.
end of the day? I mean, especially, everyone cares about the safety and well-being of folks that are coming out to attend these shows, not only the artists, but
Yeah.
any kind of spectator situation. It's like, how do you keep those folks safe? That's important.
Yeah. It's good that you recognize that. I mean, most people do, but sometimes people don't. They're thinking more about how desperate they are to play gigs. And so I'm not surprised. You're an empath and you're compassionate towards people. And I would just, I would tell people at least keep an eye on the new Myles Kennedy record. It's not hard to find him and his, you can go to MylesKennedy.com and find out when the release is going to be coming out. But I know with full assurance that the record's going to be amazing, as is Year of the Tiger. I'm really, really proud of you, man.
Well, thank you, man.
Beyond the drumming, you've inspired me in a ton of ways. You and I worked together back in the International Heroes stuff, and I think that record is really, really impressive too. And I think more impressive than anything else is to look at the way you managed a really healthy pivot. As difficult as those times were, where you felt like identity was being, sort of shifted. You handled it in a great way, and I think a lot of people could derive some inspiration from that. So I applaud you, my friend.
I appreciate that, and from my perspective, I've just been really fortunate, honestly. I love what I do. To be honest, it's just like, and the older you get, you realize like I'm only going to surround myself with people that I genuinely care to be around.
Yeah.
This life is too short, and I've been incredibly fortunate with all the opportunities that have come my way, and and also just want to thank you, man, for all your support over the years and your friendship. Really, really appreciate that, man. So
man, Mutual Admiration Society, brother. Listen. I thank you. I took more time than I expected to with you, but you and I could just rap for the whole damn day. But
that's probably the problem.
No, that's no problem there,
problem.
man. You've figured it.
But thank you, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Man, if you guys are watching and you've not yet done so, please subscribe to this channel. If you go to youtube.com/allaccesslive with Kevin Rankin, which you can see in this little tag right there, subscribe to the channel and you'll make sure to be notified when we have our next guests. On Saturday, I've got Tony Hughes, who's a regional musician in Portland who has found an opportunity to become more present and mindful using dialectical behavioral therapy. He's done quite a bit of work in that area, and I think a lot of musicians could benefit from this, especially right now in a pandemic where mental health is a pretty critical thing to focus on. So I would hope that you come back on Saturday at 3 o'clock. Again, subscribe to this channel and find Zia Uddin on all these records. Get out there and get yourself a copy of Second Skin, greatest record on the planet. And then right behind it, man, that first Mayfield record, the Fallout record, is mind-blowing. See if you can find the EP out there, which is awesome. And International Heroes is probably out of print now, right?
It's out of print for sure.
All right. Well, then just got to go out and get Year of the Tiger and the new Myles Kennedy record when it comes out. Please give my best to Christy and Tyler and the rest of your clan when you're out there rocking this holiday. All right.
Thanks so much, man. And happy holidays to everybody. Happy holidays to you and your family, buddy. Love you.
Thank you, man. I love you too, buddy.
All
Thank
right.
you.